Welcome to the Business Alliance Committee's event tonight, having Erik Assink from Yenlo give us some insights to technology innovation. Erik is Managing Director of North America, and Yenlo is an innovative technology company that delivers first-class integration services. So with that in mind, I'll turn over the podium to Erik here in just a minute. But again, a couple housekeeping rules. Everyone's on mute, everybody's videos is off, but if anybody would like to ask a question, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure that we can help you out. So from this point forward, I'm going to introduce Erik Assink and we'll go from here.
Hi, welcome everyone, and here virtually at the Colombia Tower Club. I hope next time we might be able to meet here in person. This is just a very beautiful location, and the view right now is fantastic over Seattle and the surroundings. And I really want to thank everyone here from the Colombia Tower Club to host this event and make it possible. So today we'll be discussing about digital transformation and APIs. And I think, most of you are familiar with digital transformation. It's a familiar term. Maybe less familiar is APIs. So if APIs are something that are new to you, feel free to raise your hand and I'll touch on that a little bit deeper. Because APIs really are the foundation to make digital transformation happen. And we'll cover a little bit more in depth on that. But just to give you a little bit of a few things to think about when we talk about APIs. An API is really a software connector, and it allows you to connect software applications or things together to talk to each other. So each time when you, for example, you use Twitter on your mobile phone, you're actually using an API, or when you check the weather or things like that. So nowadays, many devices have software, more and more, even smart thermostats and fridges and things like that have software in them, and they need to talk to each other or they talk across the internet. So APIs make that all possible. That's really kind of the high-level description of an API. So I'll start turning on my slides right now, and then we'll go over that. Quick introduction about Yenlo, then dive into digital transformation and some of the key ingredients that allow companies to be successful in the digital world. Then hopefully at the end, I'd like to have about 15 minutes or so, just Q&A, but along the way, feel free to put any questions in your chat, and Roger will monitor that. All right, so let me turn on my screen here. And so now I need to share that screen. All right, so you can see my screen right now? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so yeah, Roger already did the introduction. Don't want to repeat that too much, but just at a different level. I came over to the US about 20 years ago, and the initial plan was to just be here for 2 years. I was working for Baan Company, which is an ERP vendor from the Netherlands. And so I did work in the very beginning a lot with companies like Boeing to implement huge, it was, I believe, one of the biggest process re-engineering projects in the world at that time to implement an enterprise resource planning system. So I've been doing that over the past 20 years, working mostly as a solution architect, a project manager, And I later on started managing consulting practices for various companies. So my experience is a lot with doing large-scale implementations of ERP, CRM, and various other systems. Now, every time these projects go on, what you see a lot is that there's a need for integration. And so integration really intrigues me a lot. And you know, where companies need to tie their backend systems together, need to integrate with suppliers, need to integrate with their customers, and there are different approaches to do this. Now, right now, working for Yenlo, we're an integration specialist. Hang on. So we're an integration specialist, and we have offices around the world, about 100 consultants right now. We specialize in WSO2, which is an open source integration middleware platform. And we're the #1 or premier partner of WSO2 worldwide. And basically what we do is we help our customers with digital business and integration challenges via our consulting services. And we also provide an integration platform, actually the WSO2 solution, as a platform that is hosted, fully hosted by us, and where customers can just make use of the capabilities of that platform, and where we help these customers with the integrations, building web services, APIs, and enable basically digital business over the internet. Now, just to give you an idea of our customers at a high level, we have customers globally, and I will definitely highlight a few of these examples, few of the success stories of our projects here during this session. First, I wanted to go over a little bit of if you look at the last 30 years, it's really remarkable how fast that we have transformed into this digital world that we now live in. Probably could not imagine 30 years ago what this would look like. So if we briefly review this, you know, in the 90s, you had a company that was still in business, Kodak, and they really were the market leader. So they had in the mid 70s, 85% of all the cameras was actually sold by Kodak. And about 90% of all the photo film was sold by them. So they really had a monopoly there. Now, the interesting thing is that they actually developed the digital camera in the mid 70s, but they never believed in it because it was competing with their own business. So other companies like Sony, Nikon really jumped on that, and we know that the rest is history, right? So Kodak actually declared bankruptcy. It was one of the biggest companies in the US, and they went bankrupt somewhere in 2000s. So there's a lesson learned there, and some of the other examples, here, for example, if you take Netflix, which was founded in 1997, they started competing with Blockbuster. Blockbuster had lots of stores, retail stores, where you could rent video, pick up your video, and watch the videos. Now, Netflix came in with a kind of you could order it online. You could order the videos or DVDs online, keep it as long as you want, and they would be sent to you by mail, and you could return it by mail. So that cost model, the cost model that was possible due to digital innovation, really outcompeted Blockbuster. In the beginning, Blockbuster could still maintain themselves, but then when Netflix started competing with itself, so Netflix competed with itself as opposed to Kodak did not, they went into streaming in the 2000s, and they competed with their mail service basically, and then the competition became so harsh for Blockbuster that Blockbuster eventually went out of business as well. So digital really allowed for some disruption, and some of the companies understood this and became successful with it. So it's all over the board, right? It's not just video, photo. We see Amazon started out with online bookstores, right? And the retail stores that had a lot of real estate and a lot of employees, high cost, could not stay in business. Now, finance. Everybody expects nowadays to be able to do their banking online. So banks that don't have an online presence will have a hard time. So this is really in the 2000s. Now, if you look at the 2010s, we see things like Airbnb competing and disrupting the hotel industry. We see Uber, Zipcar disrupting the taxi business. Same is happening in healthcare, on and on and on, right? So now we're in the 2020s and we have a lot more technologies coming up that even will disrupt industries like broadcasting, libraries, logistics, construction. So think of technologies like 3D printing, right? That will impact construction industry. There's a lot of IoT going on, Internet of Things. So a lot of more automation that can occur like in the farming world. So basically areas that we previously thought that were immune to this digital disruption will now be disrupted. So companies really have to start thinking about a digital business model. Let's see how I can, okay. Yeah, so now, of course, COVID-19 is happening, and businesses that were very digitally oriented were able to actually continue their business. Look at Amazon, for example. I mean, they've been doing really well during this time. And normal retail business really is taking a dive. So COVID is accelerating the digital transformation roadmap. You see that, for example, universities are now trying to bring out their curricula online. They already had this as a plan, but it was just a 5-year roadmap. Instead of a 5-year roadmap, this now became a half-year roadmap. So some of the things behind it, I believe this diagram can really explain what digital is doing, how it is accelerating change. Because in the olden days, things changed also. People would change, companies would change, industries as a whole would change, political systems change. But until not so long ago, maybe 30 years ago, this change happened at the speed that we could adapt to, right? And digital is increasing this and speeding up the amount of change. So if you start out looking at the analog world that we used to live in, the physical boundaries basically determined how fast change could happen. So if you had a retail company and you had many stores around the country, and there was really an investment in physical assets. You had to hire people, things like that. And to enter a market as a competitor was not just easy. You had to have a lot of money and a lot of power. So with things becoming digital, these boundaries started to break away. So it makes, so the first wave there where production is no longer exclusive, so to speak. You could have companies like, let's say, Yahoo, or companies like digital music, digital video, do things and come up with new business models. Now, secondly, when the internet came around, it even further, reduce these boundaries, but also borders, right? Borders between countries, maybe time zones, right? And so it enabled really to provide a solution on a worldwide basis. Now, not all companies would be successful with that, but think about Yahoo, for example. Yes, they did. And you could think about the kind of doing retail, right, on a more global scale. And the investment you had to do to enter the market was way less. You could have a good idea, just a good idea and some funding, and actually disrupt an industry. Now, we see here the final wave, let's say, the fourth wave, mobile and cloud. Now, everybody carries around their mobile phone. So it's day and night, you can do business. You can pick up the phone and order something. People can, get services anytime they want. You can reach people anytime you want. And so this is really making it more and more extreme, so to speak. So a few examples from customers that we have helped, and just try to go over those fairly brief. One of our customers is Mobility. This is a Swiss company, and they're a car sharing company, the largest Swiss car sharing business. Members can book a car or a scooter. They pick it up where it's parked, and they can leave it somewhere else. So it's basically any place to any place, which really helps people to do their last mile of their commute, right? Typically people take the train there, but to get to the train or to get from the train station home is where you can just pick up your phone, book a car, very comparable to what you've seen here in the Seattle area. So we've provided them with a platform. We call it the Yenlo Connects platform, that has this middleware technology that allows to tie devices and systems together, and then to safely provide an API that the mobile apps can connect with. So we call that the middleware layer. So all the technology in between the backend systems of a company, and then let's say your mobile phone, that's the technology that we provide and host via our Connects platform. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. We're also helping Mobility, for example, with actually building those web services and developing APIs. Another example is BC Ferries, or British Columbia Ferry Services. They developed a new system so that customers can easily make reservations via mobile app, and to make sure that they get a spot on the ferry. Previously you just waited in the ferry line. You had to make sure you got there 3 hours ahead of time, and if you were lucky, you got on the ferry, right? We know that here in Seattle, how that works. Now you just go online, book your spot, certain time, you show up 15 minutes before, and then payment is arranged through your account as well. So this just makes it so much easier. It makes it possible to get better utilization out of the ferry system. You can imagine how much operational cost savings there are, as well as customer satisfaction, customer loyalty, customers that actually think this works. I want to make use of this. So it's a big investment for them, and it's going to be a huge, a lot of the revenues will just go through this API. Another example, which is pretty current, this is the Dutch Ministry of Health, where they wanted to make sure that contact tracing can be done, so everybody can download an app on their phone, and you turn on Bluetooth, and if you have been around a person that has at some point or will be tested in the future positive for COVID, you'll get an alert. Now, it doesn't share any personal data. It's just an anonymous key that everybody has, and that switches over time. So privacy is completely guaranteed. But in the background, some matching is done, and you get an alert. And then you can write at that moment, you can also make an appointment to get tested, and that information will then be fed back into the system. So that way they kind of want to control the spread of COVID. So this is another type of application that you can do nowadays with the digital in the digital world. So just to summarize then, really the kind of things that drive this. So and CEOs and CIOs are really understanding this and rebalancing more and more towards this technology that enables digital transformation, but it's still, you know, something that is not there yet. Many companies still do a lot of traditional types of integration, and there's a lot of barriers to get there. So we'll talk a little bit about the barriers in a moment. But the benefits are important to understand. The drivers are important to understand. And I think you can all kind of think of them, but customer intimacy is really you have the tools to really build customer intimacy. So if you're, for example, calling an airline about your reservation, based on your phone number, they may already know who you are. And by the way, you still have an open reservation that you have to complete. And do you want to use your point or just pay with the card that's already on file? There's a lot of convenience, and that builds customer intimacy and loyalty. Operational excellence. So we already discussed a little bit of the example of BC Ferries, but it can dramatically improve the economics and capabilities of a business. So you're looking at least a factor 10 that things can be cheaper. So that is huge, right? So also, in terms of customer loyalty, think about Tesla, for example, right? Where they continuously update the software to make your life easier when you're driving. So other factors, yeah, I think staying relevant is maybe even the biggest one, right? And being able to go short time to market, very agile. The examples of Kodak show this, right? And Netflix. So staying relevant in your industry by going digital and thinking about the assets you already have. Many companies have a lot of knowledge about their customers. They can provide new services just by using their assets, make it digital assets and create services around it. You see that a lot, that companies think about that, but what's stopping them really is the technology behind it, etc. Now, the revenue and profits, that's pretty obviously. If you're not in business, then you cannot make any revenues. But there's been many research done by MIT, also by Harvard, that really found that digitally mature firms are much more profitable than their peers. And you're talking about 30% or more. And also their stock share value is much more than companies in the same industry that are not yet digitally mature. All right, well, what is one of the challenges, and we should not just look at the technical side, it's a cultural thing as well, it's a people thing, but from a technical perspective, one of the challenges is that many organizations still have many applications, many disparate systems that are closely connected with each other. They're very hard linked with each other, and one-to-one integrations happen, and it's really one big spaghetti. If you make one change somewhere, it has impacts on different places. So they're not very agile, so to speak. And so if you want to kind of think of providing a new service or make use of your digital assets, it's really hard to do so. So as a result, what happens is, so if you look at the demands on an IT organization over time, and you look at the budget that exists for IT, the budget is increasing somewhat over time. But most of the IT capacity is used to keep the lights on. Is to really keep these systems going that are hard to connect to, hard to integrate, and there's a lot of maintenance on that. Now, we've seen that there's the customers that really demand this speed. They want digital services, and they demand a more intimate experience. So what happens is that you need to adopt and bring in some of the new technologies, right, that make this possible, like IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, mobile. All these technologies are actually new demands on an IT organization that they really don't get to yet, right? So over time, you can just imagine there's a huge delivery gap. Now, the key to solve this gap is to change the thinking about integration and to come to an integration approach that works. So I'll discuss a few strategies that we've seen, right, as we've done our projects, companies that have been successful, and how they were able to better leverage their IT capacity, how they're able to become actually more agile. So digital, so here we go back to APIs, right? So an API first strategy. So first we have to think back about what is an API. So think about an API as a digital connector for systems, and it can connect applications or databases or devices together within your organization, or to SaaS applications, across the internet, or to other systems of your suppliers or your customers. That's really what an API does. Now, the traditional approach is that companies start thinking from their backend systems and then go bottom up and then provide a service. What the API first approach is to think the other way around, to think about an API first, and to involve various stakeholders that are interested in this information. So when you then start building, understanding what the needs are of your stakeholders, collaboratively you define what an API should do. And an API, what information should it be able to provide? And you can do this from an IT perspective. You can do this through mockups and things like that. You don't really have to connect to your backend systems. We always feel that once you have this, the backend integrations will follow automatically, and they're very straightforward using the technology of the middleware stack. So starting from the API first is an important way to kind of decouple the complexity, to untangle this kind of mess or the spaghetti that we just looked at before. And over time, as you're developing your APIs and you have more and more of these reusable components, you can become very nimble and agile, and you can increase your time to market. Okay. All right, so the next one is open source first. And okay, so open source software is, I'm not sure who is familiar with it, but I'll give you a little explanation of that. You could have proprietary vendors that build their own standards, that provide middleware technology and integration technology, versus open source that typically adopts open standards. And with open standards, you can really be open and not lock yourself into a certain type of knowledge or a certain type of technology. So that's why we believe in open source. So an open source first strategy allows you to to make much more use of the innovation that's out there in the market, and then connect and make use of other open standards. So if you build up your infrastructure platform with more open source, you'll be able to lower your total cost of ownership and prevent lock-ins. Okay, thank you. So you know that open source examples are, for example, HTML, okay, XML, and nowadays there's things like JSON or REST APIs, you know, certification or access that you do when you log into something. There's something called an OAuth token that makes sure that you're who you are, and your identity of who you are is verified. So these kinds of standards are open source standards. And proprietary vendors, you will find, are slow to adapt to open standards. They try to do their own thing first, and then you know, try to make sure that you're somewhat locked into that. That's why open source is really key. All right, the next one. So microservices first. I mean, I know these are technical terms, and we can always dive into that more. But microservices are really, the demand for this is really increasing, right? So things become more and more personalized over the internet. And it will drive down to, for example, the smaller components. In terms of IT terms, I need to get information about a customer. I need to get information about a person. So these become little microservices that in an IT organization you can build. And there's a trend towards this, but it's also, it leads to a lot of reusability and scalability. So microservices now go hand in hand with what's called cloud native. So they can run really well in cloud environments. And there's a concept called containerization. Now, I'll mention a few of these technical terms because they're really key to become digitally successful, so to speak. So containers are the next level of what we call virtualization. You no longer need to have physical servers sitting somewhere. Okay, it's been already more than a decade that there's something called like virtual machines, and that's how, you know, Amazon is successful with the cloud services, etc. But now there's the next level, which is called a container, where a piece of software that has a certain function, a microservice, can be combined in a little container. Now imagine what happens if there's a lot of demand for a certain thing. You don't have to have an entire application like a large banking system, for example. Oh, it's not performing well, I need to add more servers to it, right? Now I have to copy that whole application multiple times. Very expensive. Now if it's just like, well, I need to, customer information is being asked or queried a lot, I just have a little microservice, says get customer information, and I can scale that on multiple containers within seconds. So within seconds, I can now scale up, and Netflix is doing this, for example. Like I can scale up this one thing and relieve all the performance issues. So scalability is key, and that is because it's so much decoupled, and that's why you can easily spin up more. So this is a very important part of digital transformation, digital success. Now the last one, cloud first. It's not the last one, by the way, but it's another key one. Companies used to do everything themselves. So sorry, I'm running ahead here a little bit. But if you I'll try to describe it as simple, I guess. Let me go to my note here. Right. So think about companies want to do things themselves a lot, right? And they used to, especially in IT. Now, many of these SaaS applications that are out there now, right? You don't have to have even buy a commercial off-the-shelf system, implement it on your servers, host all the infrastructure, have a lot of your, let's say, specialized IT people working on these things, whereas you can outsource it and focus on your core business. That's really the idea of a cloud-first idea. So it makes it possible to go to market with something much faster. You make use of, for example, AWS cloud. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but you have computing power in no time, right? And you can get services around it that make it that enable you to do things. You'll get QuickBooks online, right? You don't have to install a accounting system anymore on your servers. So a cloud-first strategy is really allows you to focus on your core business, lower your total cost of ownership. Now, the same is true for middleware platforms, right? You don't have to have all this integration technology. Thank you. Integration technology yourself. You can use what's called a platform as a service, and that's something that Yenlo provides. Now, so an agile integration platform is another important ingredient, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what a platform like that would look like, and of course, having digital alignment. This is very important where people, process, and technology are aligning. I mean, in the example of API first, it's already becoming a little clear, right, that stakeholders from the business side really need to drive this more than the IT organization. But it's a cultural change. And there's lots of good presentations on this already, and I don't want to repeat that, but I can definitely refer you to this information if you're interested. All right, an agile integration platform. Now, I already mentioned that WSO2 is our the key platform that we implement for our customers, that we provide services for. It enables enterprise integration, identity and access management, API management, and analytics. So with enterprise integration, you can use, they call that low code, right? It's really kind of more tying systems together in a graphical way, as opposed to coding it, doing simple transformations of data that needs to happen, map data between certain systems together, and basically create new web services or APIs for that. So you can tie ERP systems, CRM systems, the SaaS applications, databases, files, and everything together very easily. There is components like a message broker that are part of that to decouple systems and have persistency and guaranteed delivery of the integration messages. So there's a number of components there that will help you do this integration work. Now, another very important part of this is API management. You can have a web service, this is what companies used to do, and make it available on the internet, but they would have to protect that access to that through hard coding IPs, etc. And this is not really working. So API management really manages the, put a safety mechanism around your web services to create what we call managed APIs. Now, managed APIs means you can manage the life cycle of those APIs, you can monitor them, the use of them, and you can monetize them, and a number of other things. So WSO2 really provides a complete footprint across the entire middleware space with all these solutions, and it addresses the different maturity levels of organizations. It can be a little bit more traditional, where you can connect monolithic systems together, but it can also be very advanced, you know, to support the microservices that I discussed and the containerization and things like that. So that in a nutshell. So rather than the spaghetti picture that I showed you in the beginning, now all these systems are right here at the bottom. Say SaaS application, proprietary applications and things like that, and they connect into this framework. And this framework has a repository of APIs that can be used and reused over and over again. So now if you, let's say you've done 100 integration projects, let's say, now you have a whole portfolio of APIs ready to go, and the next project is basically combining these things that you already have. And so that it will increase the efficiency and creates to better use of the capacity of your IT team. So now going back to the idea of not doing everything yourself, right? So if you look at a cloud solution for a platform as a service, for this integration platform as a service, you want it to be supported, you want it to be secure, you want it to be scalable, high available, and I'm just kind of mentioning the things here on the slide. You want it to be available really quickly. And just to refer back to the example of the Ministry of Health that you saw, they needed it to be available basically right now. So we were able to provide them this entire platform in 2 weeks time frame, whereas companies that implement this themselves can take like half a year to get this going. So you can bring really your time to market down to a number of weeks. Technically, we can do it in a number of days, but there are also maintenance protocols and let's say policies and governance around it that will take a little bit of time. Guaranteed delivery, quality, and affordability. So it's in the end, it will be cheaper for you to take a platform like this rather than having it yourself, have your own staff maintain it. So this is what we offer, and we call it Yenlo Connects platform. And basically, we developed this after hundreds of the deployments of the WSO2 integration stack. And we felt like we were doing the same thing over and over and over again for every customer. So why not just build the best practices into a platform we call Connects and make it available as a platform? And so this has been very successful for us. Now, basically, that was my presentation. And I think we still have 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. Thank you.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you, thank you. Since we've got a good enough size of participants, I would be open to unmuting all. And if anyone would like to ask a question directly, I think that's kind of a great opportunity. Let me see if I can actually do this. So I've given you guys the opportunity to unmute yourselves. If anyone would like to ask a question specifically to Erik, feel free. Let's see.
Oh, I think people cannot unmute themselves. Oh, okay.
How does that work? Is that any better?
Oh, I still can't unmute myself.
Well, I tell you what, technical challenges here. The chat room is obviously open. We want to thank everybody for attending today's event. And Erik, I think that you've given us a full spectrum of things to think about. I'm kind of curious about the overall kind of integration and collaboration that you do in developing architecture that works. You know, is it, you talked about stakeholders, but how deep in IT do you really need to get to? Is it really the stakeholders driving the business needs, or can you talk a little bit on a high level what that teamwork looks like?
Yeah, I think there are ways to approach this. There have been some customers that were successful in this. They made it like a kind of a new paradigm, right? So where they create owners of, from a functional perspective, right? From the business perspective, they made them more or less owners of their business unit. And they are, of course, but they also make them owners of driving the functionality in the system. So kind of task groups around functional areas in the business where IT is a participant. So you really think of, and there's the modern day agile development that fits into this. And agile really promotes that things are driven from the business side. But the concepts of API first play into this, right? So the business is defining the API more. That's where we see success, as opposed to 80% of the time IT is defining APIs. It should be the other way around. Mm-hmm. Now, creating task groups around that, task forces around that, and really change the dynamic, the culture around this as well. There's a couple of interesting presentations that were done on this, and I'd be happy to share more information on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. We've got a question from Bill Conradi. If you want to also share your screen, Erik, the one that's up in the boardroom, you know, the attendees can kind of take a picture of this. Again, we'll be sending out a recording, but Bill's asking, Erik, what are the limitations on the applications that can be linked through an API? We use a lot of proprietary software that doesn't communicate from 40 different manufacturers. Could we gain efficiency and productivity through an API?
Yes, there are, I would say, it depends on the platform you use, right? We know with WSO2, there's a lot of different protocols that allow you to connect to any type of system. So the key is to hook into a system. And some applications might have APIs already that you can connect to. Some systems might have the ability to do a file extract, right? And then use FTP, which is a older type of protocol. And then the middleware platform can translate that into any type of format. So we call that protocol translation. So it can become a modern API, even if you have a file transfer protocol on one end, or let's say a simple direct connection SQL query wrapped around into a service, what we call a service or an API. And through that, now you've suddenly virtualized, let's say, the data that's embedded in this legacy system. And now it is available for any other system. So I would say there's really no limitation because the tool offers many, many different ways to open up legacy applications and make them future-proof, so to say, and that they can play into this microservices architecture world. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Thanks, Erik. Another question has come in from Mariana. Since you guys are working with some high-profile companies, even governments, as you showed us, with products and services that are being developed in some levels of secrecy, do you guys need to have top secret or something similar clearance, or how do you handle client privacy?
Yeah, there have been, not to the level where we actually needed security clearance, but we have a policy around this. We are certified in ISO 27001, which is really, we've all our processes documented, and we take customer privacy, data privacy very seriously. So everything is secure and encrypted. We don't store any customer data on our systems, and also our platform, for example, Connext, it's not storing any data itself. It's just messages that pass through, and we don't really look at the content of the messages at all. So that way we're at least out of that concern, right? But a key thing is every time you do business with a high profile company like that, or a government agency, they give you a big questionnaire, and you have to go through it, and there's an audit process. And yes, we've successfully gone through those. Yeah.
So it's safe to say that you probably have government clearance. You can get a few things done. So another question came in is that, and I was wondering about this as well. How long does it kind of take? I mean, you mentioned the fact that you were able to do something for the contact tracing in 2 weeks, but let's take BC Ferries, for example. What's the kind of work plan time frame where you engage and execute? Can you talk about?
Yeah, well, a lot of the work is, I mean, typically what takes a lot of time is just to think through what the business really wants. Okay, and the idea is to accelerate that, of course, through having these cross-functional conversations with IT involved at the same time. You can accelerate this, but just in the example of BC Ferries, this has been on the roadmap for a long time, and when we got started, that was about 2 years ago. The platform is going live, I believe. It's live now, but for bigger consumption, it will be in September, I believe. It will be available. Now, getting the infrastructure in place only took a matter of weeks, right? But ongoing development, getting to the right requirements, those kind of things can take a while, depending on the organization. Yeah.
Exactly. Herding the cats, as we call it, trying to make sure that we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Well, thank you. Is there any other questions? Well, it looks like we, a quick question has come in. So how big is Yenlo? How many?
Oh, yeah. We have 100 employees worldwide, globally. And we have offices in North America, in Canada, in Europe, a number of offices, headquartered in Amsterdam and in Colombo. Colombo, the reason we are there is that WSO2 has their headquarters there, their development headquarters. So we work really closely with WSO2. And we've run about 400 projects on the WSO2 platform.
And Erik, real quick, another question is coming from Todd Valtes. In Context Cloud on premises, are both options available?
Yeah, so yes, the WSO2 stack can be deployed in any way. It can be on premises, and it can be managed by Yenlo while it's on premises at your location. That's an option. It can also be hosted in your cloud, so to speak. If you have an Azure or Amazon account and you have things running there, it can be deployed there. But it can also be the Yenlo platform, the Connext platform, where you don't have to manage any of it, and you get the 24/7 support from us, and all you do is consume the functionality. So you can develop your own integrations using the platform, or you can do single sign-on, identity federation, and API management just using our platform, and we manage it for you. So yes, the answer is it's all available.
Awesome, thank you. If you could share your contact info screen real quickly to everyone can take a screenshot. Again, this will be sent out as a recording. I want to thank everyone for participating here at the top of the Colombia Tower Club. Thank you, Brittany, for helping us organize this. And thank you to the Business Alliance Committee for allowing Erik to come and speak. And thank you, Erik.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.